Muscles Assignment 1.2 Part 2 by Samuel Marsh. Isotonic muscle contractions. Isotonic muscle contractions cause the muscles to change length and can be either concentric or eccentric. A concentric muscle contraction is where the muscles involved shorten as the muscle contracts. Flexion at the elbow causes flexion of the bicep brachii muscle when doing a bicep curl and weightlifting. An eccentric muscle contraction is where the muscles involved lengthen as they contract. An example of this is the downward space when completing a press-up, pushing against an inanimate object, and in this instance, the floor. It is linked in with gravity, as the work of the muscles pushing the body down is aided by it, causing the contraction to have less force than the upward phase. Isometric muscle contractions. Isometric muscle contractions occur when there is no change in the length in the muscle fibers whilst the muscle contracts. These occur when the muscles push against a fixed object or inanimate object or resistance, and the joints and muscles involved do not move, despite the fact they're working. The joints involved are also static. When you grip a tennis racket, the joints, the metacarpals, the phalanges or muscles in the hand do not move, despite the fact they're contracting to grip the racket. Isokinetic muscle contractions are similar to isotonic contractions in the instance that they change length when they contract. However, they are different due to the fact that they produce movements at constant speed no matter what the contraction is. They are not very common in sport, however are demonstrated when the arms and legs go through adduction against the constant resistance of water in swimming when performing breaststroke. Isokinetic contractions can be measured using the isokinetic dynamometer. Here are the graphs of person 1 and 2 involved in the experiment. How muscle fibers are used from the experiment for endurance. I predict that someone with slow muscle twitch fibers in type 1 muscle types will have more endurance than somebody with type 2 A or B fast twitch muscle fibers. They exert less power and less force than the aerobic metabolism breaks down the glycogen in food slower than the type 2 muscles, meaning the endurance of the muscles are able to last longer as they get a constant supply of minerals and nutrients, and also because of the fact that their contraction speed is slower than fast twitch muscle fibers, which are used to quickly react to a stimulus. Type 1 muscle fibers need oxygen to respire, whereas type 2 muscle fibers do not need oxygen to respire, as they're not constantly taking it in to respirate. Type 1 needs to take oxygen in to respirate, meaning that they will not fatigue quicker, as the oxygen can be constantly supplied to the muscles. How muscle fibers are used from the experiment for power. I predict that someone with type 2 muscle fibers will have a larger power output than someone with type 1 or type 2A. They have a faster contraction speed, meaning they're able to exert more power and force. They also exert more power as they digest minerals and nutrients from the food the quickest, so more are available when the time of contraction is needed. They will not be able to be used for a long period of time as type 1 muscles, as type 1 muscle fibers work anaerobically, meaning they do not need oxygen to contract or respire. Type 1 muscles require oxygen to contract, as they need it to respire, meaning that they continuously contract to perform movements as the human body always takes in oxygen when breathing. How antagonistic pairs support movement in sport. Antagonistic pairs are made up of agonists and antagonists. Without them, movement would not be possible as the muscles won't be able to pull on the bones via tendons, enabling movement. Movement is paramount in most sports, especially ones such as rugby, where correct manipulation of the body can lead to scoring points. The agonist is the one that contracts to allow movement to occur in the given area. For example, the bicep brachii is the agonist when completing a bicep curl in weightlifting. The antagonist is the muscle that relaxes when the agonist is working, but also serves as a brake, so the movement doesn't overextend. If it does overextend, it may potentially injure the performer. The tricep brachii is an example of this when performing the bicep curl in weightlifting. However, the agonist needs support when contracting to enable the correct direction for the movement to occur in. The synergist enables this, being located on either side of the agonist. They work with the agonist to make it more effective and therefore faster when contracting. Despite the need for constant movement in sport, if there were no stoppage in the muscular contractions, then we would not be able to control our bodies. The fixator prevents this. It stops any unwanted movements, stabilising the joint so that we are able to cancel movement to effectively perform an action. They are located around the origin, enabling maximal efficiency. Process of muscular contraction. The process of muscular contraction involves the sliding filament theory. This starts where a nerve impulse is sent to a neuromuscular junction, where acetylcholine is secreted. This causes the motor end plates to travel through the muscles by tubulars, enabling calcium to be released. Due to the high volume of calcium, troponin and tropomyosin are removed from the active site of actin, meaning it is able to bond. As a result, the myosin, a thick contractile protein filament, attaches to the actin, forming a type of bridge. When ATP is broken down, it releases energy. This energy enables the myosin to pull the actin inwards, therefore shortening the muscle. After this occurs, myosin detaches itself from the actin, breaking the bridges that ATP enzymes bind into the myosin. When ATP is broken down, the myosin can return and attach to the actin in its binding site, repeating the process. This process can last for as long as there are enough ATP and calcium to complete the process. Once the impulse which causes this to occur, the calcium is removed and the actin returns where it originally was, causing the muscles to contract. Motor neurons. Motor neurons are a group of specialized cells that transmit action potential to the muscle fibers, enabling them to contract. They link to the muscle fiber via a neuromuscular junction, in which they send and receive information by nerve impulses along the elongated axon, made up of skeletal muscle. The motor units work together to allow this contraction by coordinating effectively due to being made up to the motor neurons. The motor unit, the process of signal. The sensory neurons carry information from the extremities given to them by the dendrites to the central nervous system. Extremities can be, for example, eyes detecting a moving ball in tennis on a serve. These nerve impulses send an action potential to the central nervous system, from which is transmitted to the motor neurons, sent to the skeletal muscle by the axon. The point in which the motor neurons interact with the skeletal muscle is called the neuromuscular junction. This is a small gap between the two and consists of many chemical synapses, including the axon terminal and the motor end plate, named the synaptic cleft. In the synaptic cleft, acetylcholine is secreted, and without it, action potential cannot cross it to create movement. When enough is secreted and the electrical charge is high enough, muscle action potential is created, in which creates a wave of contraction down the muscle fibers, enabling the tennis player to swing their racket and return the ball. This principle is the all or nothing law. If a motor unit receives a stimulus and creates enough action potential to reach the minimal charge needed to create a movement, then all muscle fibers in contact with the same motor unit will contract with the same force. If the action potential threshold is not met, then the muscle fibers will not contract.